Welcome to the Horror Unmasked podcast,
where we unmask the monsters
and explore the lore.
I'm Amber.
And I'm Lily, and today we will be dissecting
Nosferatu.
Let's re-enter the pact.
A young Ellen, longing for love, prays to any spirit to grant her companionship. Her plea is answered by a terrifying, beastly vision that causes her to collapse in a violent seizure.
That's crazy because actually when I watched this in theaters, I missed that part.
You did?
So that explains
a lot.
A lot, actually.
Yeah. That whole thing is like why all of it's going on.
Yeah.
Also, the seizures, really, from the visuals of everything, that's him raping her.
Oof.
That's why, because when it happens later in the movie on the beach, she's in a certain position. Yeah. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Years later, in 1838, Ellen lives in Wisborne, Germany, with her husband, Thomas Hutter, an estate agent. Thomas, eager to secure a lucrative deal, accepts an assignment to sell a crumbling castle in Wisborne to the enigmatic Count Orlok. Unaware that this arrangement is part of a sinister pact between Orlok and his employer, Herr Nock. Despite Ellen's ominous warnings, including a confession of a pre-wedding dream in which her bridegroom was death, Thomas departs for Orlok's castle in the Carpathian Mountains, leaving Ellen in the care of his friend, Frederick Harding.
Upon arrival, the Count eagerly reviews the paperwork for the sale and takes Thomas's locket, becoming fixated on the image of Ellen. Orlok reveals his true nature as a vampire after a minor injury causes Thomas to bleed. Using supernatural power, Orlok restrains and feeds on him, keeping him captive under the guise of aiding his recovery. While exploring the castle, Thomas discovers Orlok's coffin and confirms he is the same monster who attacked Ellen in her youth. Thomas attempts to kill Orlok with a pickaxe, but the Count awakens and retaliates.
And he butt-ass naked.
Fleeing from Orlok's hounds, Thomas escapes by leaping into a river and is later rescued by a nearby Orthodox church. After regaining his strength, he rushes back to Wisborne, desperate to warn Ellen of Orlok's impending arrival.
Spoiler warning. Skip ahead. Back in Wisborne, Ellen begins to experience seizures and disturbing sleepwalking episodes. Dr. Wilhelm Sievers attributes her condition to an imbalance in her blood. But as her symptoms worsen, he consults his mentor, Albin Eberhard von Franz, a disgraced scientist now delving into the occult. Von Franz deduces that Ellen is under Orlok's influence, identifying him as a demonic Nosferatu. Despite Frederick's skepticism, Ellen begins to predict Orlok's arrival with chilling accuracy. Meanwhile, von Franz reveals that Orlok must sleep in soil from his burial ground. But they fail to realize that the vampire has transported crates of this dirt, along with plague-ridden rats, to Wisborne by ship.
Orlok's arrival brings a devastating plague to Wisborne, causing mass death and despair. Thomas returns to find the town in chaos. Orlok manipulates Ellen in a dream, revealing that he tricked Thomas into signing divorce papers disguised as the land deed and threatening to destroy Wisburg unless she agrees to reaffirm her pact from years ago. Within 2 nights, she must grant verbal approval or risk the town's destruction. The next evening, Orlok brutally murders Frederick's wife and children, driving Frederick to despair and death. And other really weird things.
Yeah.
Ellen von Franz and Sievers uncover the key to defeating Orlok. Ellen must willingly sacrifice herself to the vampire, keeping him occupied until sunrise.
Mm-hmm. Von Franz distracts Thomas and Sievers by leading them to Orlok's manor, where they destroy Knock, mistaking him for Orlok. Realizing the truth too late, Thomas races back to Ellen. In a final act of courage, Ellen allows Orlok to feed on her, sacrificing herself to delay him until dawn. As the first rays of sunlight pierce the horizon, Orlok is destroyed. His body collapses on top of her. Ellen succumbs to her wounds, but her sacrifice saves Wisburg from further devastation. Thomas is left to mourn his beloved, her bravery and selflessness, ensuring the town's survival. The end.
Period.
This is a very good movie.
I agree.
This is a very... There's going to be a lot of people who aren't going to comprehend it or think it's weird.
For true. For sure.
But for true, for sure.
Yeah, both. Yeah, for true. Yeah.
But it's an art piece.
Yeah.
And that's mainly probably, I think, the reason why a lot of people will think that way.
Mm-hmm. I remember watching this and then coming back to you and being like, this movie is what the first Bram Stoker's Dracula was wanted to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this movie was released December 25th, a Christmas movie.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, for real, 2024. It is R-rated, and it is a horror drama. The director is Robert Eggers. Screenplay written by Robert Eggers. Distributed by Focus Features and Universal Pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Adapted from Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, and Dracula. I do have their box office. What was their budget?
Their budget was $50 million.
Their box office was $172.2 million.
Nice.
And they had an amazing cast.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
top names. Some
Yes.
top names in there.
And here we go. Bill Skarsgård.
Hell yeah. Unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Unrecognizable.
But he was Count Orlok. It wasn't until like they showed him a little bit longer that I was like, wait a minute.
You want to know when I knew it was him? When they did the close up on his eyes, and his
Yes.
eyes just a little bit were,
Yep.
and I was like,
Yep.
there he is. I was like, you got a little bit of the Pennywise in you.
Yep. But if you couldn't tell who he is, Mr. Count Orlok himself.
Hell yeah.
Then we have Lily Rose Depp as Ellen.
Amazing.
Nicholas Hoult as Thomas. Willem Dafoe as
Ew.
the Professor.
Professor.
Aaron Taylor Johnson as Friedrich. And Emma Corrin as Anna. Did you have
I have
another?
two others.
Okay.
So I have Ralph Inson, which is Dr. Sievers.
Yes.
And then Simon McBurry, which was Knock.
Yeah.
AKA kind of like your... It's kind of fascinating with this whole movie. But like, okay, before we get into anything else. Runtime, death count,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
So this movie is kind of long. It's 2 hours and 12 minutes.
Which is interesting because it feels right.
Yeah.
Like the length.
Yeah.
It's not moving too fast or too slow. It's
Right.
got a really good pace to it, honestly, for how long it is.
Yeah, I agree. And 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. So
That's very good.
very, very good.
It deserves
I'm gonna
it.
agree with that.
It deserves it.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna agree with it. Yeah. Very good. Especially if you're comparing it to Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Such a massive vibe shift.
Very much.
Literally, honestly, this and then watch Last Voyage of the Demeter, and I think that it
Yeah.
would be a perfect
Yes. Yeah.
pair.
I agree. But the death count in here is wild.
Yeah.
99.
Yeah.
That includes the humans, animals, and vampires.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Yeah, for real.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people be dying be a plague or
Yes.
having their head bitten off.
Yeah.
That poor pigeon did not deserve that.
No.
And then he just munched and crunched on him, and I was like, ew, that's gross.
Yeah. No thanks. No thanks.
I was like, that's...
You know, honestly, that was
grody.
something I had forgotten about until you said it just now. So
Yeah, because he's fucking
thanks
petting
for
it.
putting that back in my brain.
He's petting it like it's a little thing, and then it's just like, and I'm just like, God damn. God damn. Wild shit. Also, just in case, depending on how the audio, if it picks it up or not, there are lawn guys doing the lawn.
Hold on, let's just see. Hold on.
You might be hearing like a lawnmower or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's lawn people. So if you hear like lawn mower or lawn sounds, that's it. All right.
Glad we got that out of the way.
Glad we got that out of the way.
Okay.
But before getting into the meats and potatoes
Yes.
of it all, getting into more of the conversation about the comparison between so this movie, yes, it's Dracula. Yes, it's Nosferatu. It's interesting because you see the bits of the Bram Stoker, you see the bits of the Nosferatu. Like it's like you can really see it. Obviously, there's stuff that's it's only bits and pieces that have been mashed together. And I think it's really interesting how they melded the stories together. Because like when you've read the book and seen the Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
Reading the book is probably a little bit more easy for you to notice certain things.
Yeah.
But the movie does have some of the stuff, but it's like the estate agent, the crumbling castles, going there and being trapped
and him
then
seeing like the locket and
then him like the whole concept of the bringing the dirt with him, but also like him leaping into a river, being found by nuns, but then also you have like the sickness and the plague kind of vibes to certain things, and him eventually coming and tormenting. There's definitely obviously some shift to it, but you've also got your hints of like the doctor, like the blood doctor, like, but instead he's like an occultist, and it's interesting because they kind of like certain characters are kind of almost split in two different characters, or some are
the
shifted
same because you have Ellen
different.
as like both.
Yes,
she was definitely playing the role of Mina and Lucy,
like a little bit of both.
Yeah,
but it's also interesting to see because you also get this like the desperation for love as a young girl and asking for anything to love her, and then being plagued by that. But then also you get like it's interesting because it's like even in the castle, or when he's coming and he meets like the gypsy, like the town,
right?
And it's like and what's even more interesting is what they're doing in the movie when Thomas gets to the town before he officially makes it to Orlok's castle. What they're doing at night, like because there's a scene where they're essentially attempting to sacrifice a virgin to Orlok, but they go to a grave and dig someone up. and kill them because they suspect them to be a vampire.
Yeah.
Which is very classic to the concept of, you know, we mentioned it last week. Well, not last week, but like in the last, you know, vampire episode of The Lost Boys. When we were talking about like the different mythos of like, it's a corpse and these are the decomposition processes, but it makes people believe that they're a vampire coming back to life and consuming things. So it's a similar concept in that regard. But like, I like the fact that he's a villain.
Yes.
100%. And I think the acting choices are really interesting and fun.
Yeah, because I don't like how in Bram Stoker, how they try to make it be like, oh, but
Very-
it's his long lost love. And
Yeah.
that's why he's doing all of this. It's like, no, fuck him.
Because it also
He's killing
like
people.
is so different than the book, because in the book, number one, it focuses Lucy is very much the main character. It's only towards the latter half of the book that it goes to Mina after Lucy has already passed.
And Dracula is this
Monster
that has
is not
disrupted
really
their whole
talked
life.
a whole lot. Like, isn't prominent in the story in regards to like interacting with the characters.
Yeah.
And everyone has much more of like Mina is 100% like against him, all this kind of stuff. So it's very different than the movie where they have her kind of enthralled.
Yeah.
And all this kind of stuff, and very much like not like the book. Whereas this definitely has this like, I love my husband, but I'm aware that I have this connection that I'm the only one that can solve this. And I think that's kind of beautiful in a way, because our leading actor dies at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But it's a weird, and it's kind of funny that we're doing it this month. Go Women Empowerment.
Yeah.
Because it's very much that.
Mm-hmm.
She took it, like, she understood the sacrifice that she had to make in order to save people.
Mm-hmm.
And she also knew that it's one of those situations where it would go, she'd be an unsung hero, only known by a few to have saved an entire town. Because of like the mythic level of what's happening.
Right.
And I don't know. I also really love the depiction of Orlok.
Yeah.
And just the mentality of him, kind of this decrepit creature. Not this handsome, well-to-do, attractive man.
Because he's not.
Who's wanting a flirt and stuff. Also, the way he feeds is fascinating.
On the chest, straight through the heart.
It's very much, it gives very much like Leech. Because that's very, it felt more like.
It wasn't as sexualized. Well,
exactly.
like, yes, because it's like right where her breasts are, but it's like.
But it's because like even with Thomas, that's just where he feeds, is right there in the center of the chest.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of fascinating because it's that Leech. It's less the sensual like vampire
let me
neck
suck on your neck
bite.
a little bit.
It's not a bite on the neck. It's this like gulping, raspy, like consumption of a thing. Because the first time we see like the feeding, when he feeds on Thomas in front of the fucking like fireplace, like that's like gross and visceral. Like it's like the sound of him like gulping and everything is really intense. So I think it's a good newer version of what Bram Stoker should have been.
I agree.
Really.
Wholeheartedly.
Like, I think, honestly, it's this and then Demeter that are a perfect pairing.
Yeah.
Because they both have the right vibe to each other.
Like the emotional depth of it and
the intensity, the fear. The fear is definitely there. Because it's not necessarily a scary movie.
No.
But it is intense.
And it's very dark.
It's very dark. It's very dark. Her possession scene is like a whole fucking thing. Like the level of uncomfort when you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
How did she move her face like that?
Like, what is she like, it's legit, man. That's like for real. And it's I don't know. It's definitely, it feels like there's more to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, is very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely, it breathes art piece without question.
Yeah. It is art.
Like
Very much.
100% without question.
Mm-hmm. And I knew it would
Yeah.
probably get a lot of hate from people.
Oh, yeah.
Which, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't care.
Because it's people being like, a weird piece of hate that I think is just fucking weird. Is fucking weird. And I mentioned it to you before we recorded all this, is that for some reason people hated the fact that Orlok had a mustache.
Yes.
And I'm just like,
Oh my God.
they were all real weirded out that he had a mustache. Because I found something that explains why he has a mustache. It's because it's supposed to be themed after our real life Dracula. Like our real world guy. Vlad the Impaler. Because
Yes.
Vlad the Impaler had that beard.
Yes.
And that's why they did that.
And that mustache.
Like the beard, the mustache, the look.
Yeah.
So the reason why he has the mustache that he has in the fucking movie is because it's meant to be themed after where he comes from and like that side of the historical context
Yeah.
of the character. Because he's not just a mythical creature. He's also like a real dude who lived like a long time ago
And
who got nicknamed that.
If you don't know anything about that, go watch our very first episode on the pod.
Yeah. Where we talked about Bram Stoker's Dracula and talked about Vlad the Impaler. Like, it's a whole thing.
It is. Lots of influences on influences.
Oh, yeah,
on
for real.
Influences.
And honestly, seeing, for the fact that we've done 3 now vampire movies.
4.
4?
This is the 4th.
Where's number 4?
Voyage.
Oh, Voyage. Sorry. My brain blinked. 4th vampire film.
Mm-hmm.
They are all so different.
Yeah, yeah.
They're all so different.
Mm-hmm. This one and Demeter are kind of on the same
wavelength.
Yeah, but if you compare Dracula to Demeter to Lost Boys
to Nosferatu,
it's a roller coaster.
It's a whole vibe shift happening.
Horror is horror, but
yeah, like the kind of more sensual vibey of Lost Boys and Bram Stoker's is as close as you're going to get with the two of those. And then it's like Demeter and Nosferatu, they have a similar vibe, but they've got such a drastic story focus and a fascinating like concept. It's really kind of fun because even in that they refer to it as Nosferatu. So it works even more so when you put those two, Nosferatu and Last Voyage of Demeter, together. They fit still perfectly. And again, it's nice to see them kind of combine two classic pieces of literature.
Yeah.
You know? I think that's a fun concept and people need to be playing with classic literature. Because there's some crazy shit that could happen, man.
Yep, like this movie.
For real.
There's so many stories to be told, and I just don't understand why people have given up on telling them and are just retelling the same ones, though.
Or
what I agree with this is that it kind of took a bad movie and made it better.
Yes.
Which more people need to do.
Yeah.
Or just completely make new stories.
Yeah. I agree. I think there's a lot of merit in playing with stuff. Also taking stories that maybe have like a more positive spin and giving them a dark turn is also fascinating.
Yes. But
yeah, I'll hop into my notes.
Yes, please give me all the backgrounds.
So there's only so much that I can do in an episode.
Words.
Because when I say that this film could just give me so much, it really can. And I just had to stop at a certain point. I was like, this is too much. It's getting long. I'm like, I'll just, because it's not, truthfully, other than Orlok himself, it is not an FX extensive, like it doesn't require a lot of special effects in regards to like makeup and stuff.
Right.
It's more like lighting and set design and how characters play on the screen and the way that they, you know, pose or move stuff. So I do have a couple things that are more of a lighting based and specific to certain scenes and things like that in story beats in the film. But overall, they actually shot some of this in the Czech Republic. And with mostly practical effects, which is actually really nice.
Oh, I love it.
And also on sound stages.
Yeah, that I could kind of tell.
Yeah. So Robert Eggers, not Edgers. That's a whole other thing. Eggers. The location was very difficult to find in the Murnau film and also the Herzog version.
Okay.
So the scenes take place. So there's you know the little scene where they've got them on like the beach when she's like talking to them about that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So,
Soundstage.
No.
What?
Wait. So the scenes take place on a beach.
Oh.
Murnau and Henrik Gallen, the screenwriter, they had to have read Bram Stoker's Dracula, the novel, and saw the descriptions of Whitby. Because you have the cemetery that overlooks the ocean. So they wanted to have something that was kind of like that.
Yeah.
So in creating this more humble version of sailors' graves and sand dunes, they shot it in the Czech Republic, which is landlocked. So they thought that with northern German setting, it would potentially make more sense for there to be an estuary near the town, because otherwise they would have to travel quite a long way from Wisberg to get to the seaside. So they thought that all of their problems would be solved and that they could have a lake that they could turn into an estuary with some CG.
Yeah.
But finding a lake in the Czech Republic
Also a difficult task.
was also very difficult.
Yeah.
So the one that they settled on, nobody really liked it.
Oof.
The day that they showed up, it was flooded and there was barely any shoreline to work with.
Oh, shit.
Most of the crew was standing in the water shooting for actors who are about to sink into the sand.
No.
So that whole thing, they were like all standing in the water, literally sinking into the sand for that whole little shoot.
So fun. I would have been terrified just a little bit.
Absolutely hilarious. I mean, I like the fact that they tried to do it practical in that regard, but I'm like, guys, just go on a soundstage if it's going to be that hard.
Right. And
to deal
honestly,
with
I
it.
thought it was.
Nope, it was very much
I thought it was a soundstage.
on location.
Watching the movie, I was like, this feels fake. So maybe they would have been better off.
Yeah, for real.
Because we all thought it was fake anyway.
I know, right?
But that's okay.
Or like,
What's done is done.
it don't gotta be the Czech Republic. Maybe just find somewhere else
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of theme it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Play it up. So, in the beginning of the movie,
In the beginning.
there's the call. So, that whole scene has a lot to do with play with moonlight.
Yeah. Okay.
Because, like, when the fabric is moving, you can see the shadow of Orlok, like, in the fabric as it's moving and everything like that. So, they were they were talking about how they were shooting the light. They were actually shooting it into a convex mirror so that the light was as hard as possible. And when we say like hard light, soft light, it's the difference between whether or not like A hard light is something that has like a very distinct
Edge.
Also is very intense. Really solid. Your soft lights are going to have more feathered edges and be a little bit more diffused. So they set it at a high angle so that they could still have it reach her in the window. Because it's also, it's a twofold. It's that, and then it's also when she reaches out to him. They kind of do this kind of vibe a couple times in the film. They do it at the beginning, and then they also do it when she calls him that first time after, when she's like, come to me.
Yeah.
So for that, it's like still having to reach her in the window, because if you set it too high, then she's in shadow at the windowsill. So you have to like contain it somehow. So it only goes to the mirror and doesn't bounce all around the room.
Oh, okay.
So Jaren and him, they talked all the time how they were going into pre-plan, then execute the plan, which is the case most of the time. But even that scene, like mentioned on the beach with the flooded, and there was basically no room for the actors to move. They still basically shot what they wanted. They had to modify it a tiny bit, but obviously Lily had a very good physical performance. And that informed a lot of the different aspects of it, because she was learning how to do all of the stuff while they were still mapping the film out.
Okay.
So during those scenes with the moonlight, they're very monochromatic scenes, like very black and white.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a nice like touchstone back to the originals.
That feels like most of the movie. But
well, yeah, the whole movie itself is very muted in its colors.
yeah.
But I like those scenes where they really do get into that black and white kind of vibe, because it does touch back on the classic films of Dracula and all that kind of stuff, which is very nice. So there's a lot of people that sometimes are confused because they say it's as if it's a black and white film. So it's a continuation of an idea that began in the Northman. So that was a little bit more scientific. So Northman is a different. And sometimes this might be a little too, it's a little too literal, which it is. But as mammals, you don't see color at night.
Oh.
So technically, it's a similar approach for this movie, only that they allowed it to go a little bit bluer and a little bit more stylized, which is more in that monochrome mentality, either through filters or gels, depending on what the camera has to do, the lights and where they are. No red light is reaching the film.
Right.
So it's what you call a short pass filter. So that was born out of, it had more to do with them doing testing on the Northman and not really getting the look that they were looking for in their head. So out of curiosity, they had the lighthouse filter. Their orthochromatic filter for black and white, and they put it on the camera. And when they put it on and tested it, suddenly it looked the way that they had wanted.
Okay.
And they didn't really know like why. And they did some research, and it's because the human eye not only does not see color at night, but it only sees like a small part of the spectrum.
It doesn't see color at night.
Yeah. So it's It starts in this really kind of nerdy place. But yeah, it's meant to be more, because a lot of it is filmed where it's a nighttime.
Right.
But yeah, the later at night you get, if you're just like out in the dark,
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
you don't
If
really
it's
perceive
dark.
color.
Yeah.
Like if you're just outside in the moonlight, it's not really
Yeah.
that heavily processed. Or it's highly muted.
Yeah.
So that's where this film kind of sits at. So there's a big confrontation scene towards the end of the film. The possession.
Yes.
So they rehearsed that and blocked it with her and her movements very differently.
Okay.
So when they were finally shooting it, Lily was overwhelmed by the dress. And it did not read on camera what she was doing, like her actual movements. The dress kind of hid a lot of it.
Okay.
So Mary Gabriel Rohde, the choreographer who worked with Lily, went home that night and they kind of were trying to think of something different for her to do. So they came in on stage the next day and rehearsed it. They did have to change the camera movements to accommodate it, because it became more about the face.
Right.
Because the movements were lost in the dress. So they were kind of like, losing sleep over this confrontation scene.
Yeah.
Because a little after halfway through the film, they had a competent version of the kind of possession scene that they see in a lot of other movies.
Right.
But then they needed to top that somehow.
Yeah, I was very interested in how they were going to do this because it was like, all right, is it just going to be another
classic kind
Bram
of
Stoker's Dracula where he
yeah
fucks her in the garden and
For
then
real.
we're good? Or what's this going to be?
Yeah,
And then
they definitely wanted to play with the visual or like the emotional side of it. So
I do think this is one of my favorite parts in the film.
yeah, the possession is very fascinating
Yeah.
scene because there's a moment where the lamp is on the floor, so it's under lighting her, which creates a nice like horror movie
Yeah.
Boris Karloff vibe to it. But more than that, as she comes around the room in this like sweeping motion before she starts tearing at her bodice, they were like, it's gonna look like theater footlighting. And here she is taking the stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was really helpful in overall designing the shot because they were able to take kind of a small like bit of more of a theater side to it. And the main thing that they were looking for in the possession scene is to keep it within reality.
Right. Which I thought it was very
Exactly.
much. Like all of those facial features that she was doing is very much
Exactly.
possible, but very creepy. Unnatural for sure.
Because one of
possible.
the most marvelous things about Lily Rose Depp's performance is her wild like physicality. People thinks it's a lot of people think it's CGI manipulation or
Really?
sped up wire work,
Oh.
but it's all her doing all of the movements and
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
for the film, which is crazy, but it's, you know, it's what she's there for. It's what she's born for. It's kind of that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And then we get into a little bit about the mausoleum. The mausoleum. So there's actually a green screen shot,
Okay.
which seems a little silly, but it's nighttime when they were shooting. And the schedule dictated that they only had like one day.
Oh.
So when you shoot the reverse, they tinted it and did it during the day.
Oh.
So
I hate when they do that.
the background had to be fake so they could shoot it at a non-dusk time.
Okay.
because they do so much practical stuff, and they actually built that massive backlot.
Okay, well, actually, if I can't tell that you've done it, then great job. But there's
Yeah.
a scene in Game of Thrones, like, or House of the Dragon, where it's like they very clearly shot this during the day and then put a filter over it
Yeah.
and said, "Ooh, nighttime."
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Because they were using thousands of real rats and real wolves
Oh.
in the film. So a shot like this, a blue screen or a green screen shot, you'd never even think about it.
No.
You'd never even consider that this would be a visual effect shot. So that's something that they did a lot. The stuff you'd expect to be visual effects, they tried hard not to do them. So then when simple things ended up having to be the visual effect shots because of budget and scheduling and or health and safety and also random shenanigans, they became invisible, essentially. So one fun fact is that the coffins were not made of balsa wood, which is a more lightweight, easier to carry wood. They were made of oak.
Why?
Or something similar.
Why would they do that to themselves?
They were the heaviest coffins that you'd ever seen. And the undertakers or the pallbearers
Yeah.
could pick up the coffins of the children, but Anna's coffin was so heavy that they couldn't lift it. So the kids' coffins they could lift. Anna's, they couldn't lift it.
Yeah.
A week prior, they happened to come across a Victorian newspaper article about pallbearers being crushed to death by a coffin.
Oh my God.
That fell on them.
Oh my God.
That they were carrying into a grave, and I guess they were texting this to everybody, but it was also a little scary because they were worried that was actually going to happen.
Yeah.
Because they were like, oh shit, we made like a legit coffin that's actually really heavy as fuck, and we might actually crush our actors
That's crazy.
who are trying to portray the what like for real. But I had to stop looking up notes at that point, otherwise it was going to
keep going.
But there's so many fascinating things that are happening inside of this film. So many kind of like creepy and terrifying things. Like, again, talking about the mausoleum scene. Like when Fredericks finally like snaps because he's also become ill.
Yeah.
And they find him.
Yeah.
Very clearly having done some stuff with his dead wife's body.
Yeah.
Is like, well, shit, my guy.
Yeah. That's how you... That... Just... No.
Just like, maybe don't.
Yeah.
Thanks. But, yeah, it's definitely... It's a very visceral film. That's for sure. Without question.
Yeah.
They're like acting directions, and the way that they've set things up is very much that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I find some stuff when I'm like scrolling through like Instagram and whatnot. And this is more about Orlok and like his makeup and stuff, but they wanted to depict him as, most of the time when you see vampires, they're usually like this, like porcelain, pristine, all of their everything is fantastic.
Not this guy.
No, they actually wanted to keep it closer to like what a real life vampire would be more, which is the undead,
which is dead. So you're decaying. You're a corpse.
Made him more corpse and had him actually decaying. So I thought that was a very nice twist.
Yeah. Poor Ellen.
I know, right?
Oh, girl.
Don't be praying to anything.
Yeah.
For love and companionship.
If there's one thing you get from this movie,
don't pray to random spirits. You don't know what you're gonna get. Don't do that. That's a mistake.
Yep.
Waiting to happen. You gonna be an Ellen? Do you really want to be an Ellen?
No.
And
if that's not your answer,
you know, maybe you're meant to save a town. I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Well, she doomed the town.
I mean, she doomed the town first and then was like,
All right, I guess I'll save it. If I must.
My husband lives here, so I guess.
Yeah. Right.
She's like, the man I love lives here, so
Yeah.
I guess I'll save it.
Mm-hmm. I suppose. If that's what we're doing now, then sure.
For real.
Oof.
All right, but you got some good notes for me.
Yeah, I have a little bit of background on just Dracula and Nosferatu and where these all stem from.
They're
and their
definitely
inspiration.
fascinating creatures.
Well, it's more just about like the books and the movies and the like a little bit of drama that happened.
Ooh.
Yeah. So the original Nosferatu is a 1922 German silent film directed by F.W. Murnau and produced by Albin Grau. It was a direct but unauthorized adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yep.
But the filmmakers did not put a lot of effort to disguise their source material.
No.
And marketed the film as freely adapted from Dracula. But they did alter key elements like renaming Count Dracula Count Orlok.
Yeah.
And then making him more monstrous in his appearance. But unlike the suave and sophisticated Dracula, Orlok was rat-like, hunched, more terrifying.
Yep.
And more representation of like pestilence and disease.
Yes.
But the film also introduced new lore, like Orlok casting a shadow, unlike Dracula.
Yeah.
And unlike Dracula, being able to be destroyed by sunlight.
Yes.
But since Prana Film, the production company behind Nosferatu never secured the rights from Bram Stoker's widow, or Florence Stoker. And she aggressively pursued legal action.
I'm not shocked.
Yeah, she was like, ain't no way. Prana Film was going bankrupt, and Stoker won her lawsuit.
Yeah.
And a German court ordered all copies of the film to be destroyed. But some prints had already made it to the U.S., where Dracula was in the public domain.
Yeah.
So these surviving copies, like, quietly circulated and eventually got a cult following.
Yeah, Nosferatu is a very occult film.
Yeah. Obviously got the following. And so by the 60s, when Dracula's copyright expired worldwide, that meant Nosferatu could legally be shown anywhere, which then secured its place in horror history.
Yeah. It's actually kind of funny because someone I follow, she is goth, and some of her friends went to a old church to watch Nosferatu while they had like a live music.
Oh my god.
Doing stuff. Oh yeah, they had like live music
That's crazy.
for it.
That's so cool.
Very cool.
That is very cool. So, despite Florence Stoker's efforts, Nosferatu did become an iconic horror film, which did influence the vampire genre and cinema just altogether, very massively. Whereas like Count Orlok's grotesque design, his eerie atmosphere, and like the innovative cinematography definitely made an impact going forward with vampire movies. Okay, so the character was so terrifying that some speculated that the actor Max Schreck might have been a real vampire. Which was a myth that was actually explored in the film Shadow of the Vampire, which is
very funny.
Which was made in 2000. But today, Nosferatu is considered a masterpiece of silent horror.
Yeah.
And stands next to Dracula as one of cinema's most enduring vampire figures.
Yeah.
Okay. As for, I was interested in the differences between Dracula and Orlok.
Oh yeah.
And there are many.
There are many. Oh yeah.
There are many categories actually.
Oh, facts.
As for physical appearance, for Dracula, he's traditionally depicted as a very suave,
attractive,
yes, sophisticated man.
seductive.
Yeah, seductive.
Oh, yeah.
So he's described as having a pale complexion, sharp teeth, a hypnotic presence.
Oh, yeah.
And then later in films, especially Bela Lugosi in 1931,
Oh, yeah.
his portrayal emphasizes like Dracula's charm, his elegance, his basically tall, dark, and handsome.
Tall, dark, mysterious, handsome.
Mysterious,
yes.
handsome, yes. With slick back hair.
Hand me one of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whereas Count Orlok
It is
quite the opposite.
creepy, scary, and scary.
Grotesque, terrifying, bald head, rat-like.
Oh, yeah.
Sunken in eyes, claw-like hands, long fingers.
Also, just the way they depict the teeth.
Yes,
the difference between the Nosferatu is the front two, whereas Dracula is classically like the canine vibe. It's
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And his hunched posture.
Oh, yeah.
So more of monstrous than monstrous creature than seductive villain.
Exactly.
Then we go into personality and behavior, whereas
yeah.
Dracula is seen as more intelligent, manipulative, charming.
Yeah.
Again, with that seductive,
Very regal. He has that definitely vibe. Yeah.
He enthralls his victims and uses hypnosis, his hypnotic gaze, to control them.
Yeah.
He blends more into society and is very deceiving and easier to get people to trust him.
Yeah.
Whereas Count Orlok is more animalistic,
Yep.
predatory, does not have any charm or social grace.
Definitely is the hunger.
Yeah.
Is hunger
Yes.
based.
Doesn't even try to seduce his victims. He rather stalks them like they're prey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with Orlok, the fear is more immediate.
Yes.
And doesn't take.
You're more likely to be
isn't
paralyzed by
yes.
fear than by how attractive he is.
Yeah. It's more physical than psychological.
Yeah.
As for, there's many more.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like shadows and visual symbolism. So for Dracula, he doesn't cast a shadow.
No.
And he has a more human-like presence. So his horror comes from his supernatural abilities and his intelligence. But for Count Orlok, his shadow is a major visual element, especially in Nosferatu, where it stretches across walls, looms over his victims before he attacks, and his silhouette is like the iconic scene of his shadow creeping up the stairs.
Yep.
Yeah. Enhancing his spooky presence.
His spookiness.
Then you go into like their weaknesses and how they die.
Yeah.
So Dracula is able to move around in the sun.
Yes.
And walk around in daylight.
Yeah.
He's weakened by it, but it doesn't kill him.
Yeah.
But and is traditionally killed by a stake through the heart, decapitation, or holy weapons such as crucifixes and garlic.
Yep.
Count Orlok, sunlight immediately kills him.
Well, fuck him up.
Fuck him up hard.
He be gone.
Yes.
We watched that movie. That motherfucker gurgled his soul out of his body.
Yes, he literally like it made him like
he melted.
He melted. He did. And then the way he's like over top of Ellen's body is
But he's also
wild.
this like skeletal creepy.
Yes. Ugh. Poor Ellen.
Yeah.
There's also differences between their themes and symbolism.
Yeah.
Whereas Dracula is associated with like things I've said before, like his aristocracy, seduction, disease, symbolizing fears of foreign influence and corruption of purity.
Yes.
And is a figure of control and dominance. But Count Orlok represents pestilence and spread of plague and, again, is more rat-like.
Which is also, when you see the difference between Nosferatu and Bram Stoker's Dracula, that's very evident.
Yeah.
Because Bram Stoker's Dracula, his is more the psychological, all that kind of stuff. Whereas this, like, literally Nosferatu, this motherfucker brought plague rats with him.
With him, yeah. So it links him to historical fears of pandemics.
Exactly.
As for, like, okay. The last thing I have is more, like, setting and adaptation.
Yeah.
Changes. So Dracula moves from Transylvania to England.
Yeah.
And represents an invasion of the Western world by an Eastern type menace. And has a goal to establish new hunting grounds in London.
Yeah.
Nosferatu moves from Transylvania to Germany.
Yeah.
And So this setting shift makes the film more localized to the German audience, and Orlok's arrival brings literal death and decay, which, again, pestilence.
Yeah.
So it's not crazy like setting changes. It's just Transylvania to one part of Europe or another. But I think if you look at just the histories in each place, it tracks why they would make that change.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got. Lots of differences. Even though Miss Stoker wanted
to be like, nah, get the fuck out.
Like too close in resemblance. I don't like it. I mean, it was heavily influenced, but just like
the visual vibe is very different.
At least visually, I don't know about thematically, but just their purposes of doing the things that they do and how they do them and the way they look doing them.
So
very different.
I do have something to add towards that
Okay.
I think is very funny.
Okay.
Because Nosferatu is a very special boy.
Yeah.
Because so there's also pop cultural reference things.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lovely game combination, both video game and video game, called Vampire the Masquerade. And it is both a video game and a TTRPG, which is tabletop RPG.
Role-playing game, yeah.
Role-playing game. So.
You said TT, I went, huh?
Now, in Vampire the Masquerade, there are essentially different clans, best way to put it. Now, one of those clans is the Nosferatu. It is a completely different vampire type.
Okay.
So, now, each of the clans have kind of a different visual interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's let me think of the best way to kind of say it. So there's the Bruja. They are way more associated with like anarchy. They're more like activists kind of vibe, but they're also considered they're radical troublemakers, essentially. The description for them is the Bruja are a clan of radicals and troublemakers, embracing those willing to put someone in their place if the situation calls for it. Most see themselves as warriors with a cause, and these rebels are guided by their passion, strength, and dedication to their ideals, wherever those may be, or whatever those may be. So so in this game, essentially, you are a human who are then bitten and are transformed. And you can end up as one of these whatever clans.
How many clans are there?
There are let's see. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,
oh, Jesus.
12,
Okay.
13, 14, 15. 15.
Damn.
Different ones. There's all sorts of different ones. And there's ones that are like the Banu Hakim, which are like more of the judges. You tend to get like, this is the judges. Those are the anarchists. You've got the La Sombra, which are more of, they're darker, more creature subtlety. They're ruthless, kind kind of that kind of idea. Then there's one that's called like a gangrel. Those guys are closer to beasts, more animalistic. Then there's like the Malkavians, which they're the ones that are more of like seen as lunatics, but they have this weird, like, they're a wise madman. They're like psychical,
Word.
but also they're like a hippie who's high on blood.
Me.
Essentially.
Me as a vampire.
They're kind of crazy. They're a little fucking weird, but they also have this like innate mental capabilities. Now the Nosferatu are very special. They're very different. Most of the other vampires look human. And then just they've adapted somehow based on how they were turned or who turned them, but anybody can become a Nosferatu.
Ooh.
It's a corruption, essentially.
Right. Okay.
They become horrifically corrupted. Their
Which just
skin
speaks
and
to
everything.
what Nosferatu versus Dracula is. Yeah.
So the Nosferatu wear their curse on the outside. Their bodies horribly twisted and deformed through the embrace.
Yep.
They lurk on the fringes of most societies, acting as spies and brokers of information, using animals and their own supernatural capacity to hide. Nothing escapes the eyes of the so-called sewer rats.
Oof.
So they're an interesting character. So in the video game, if you choose to play as a Nosferatu in the video game, you can't be seen above ground.
Right. No sunlight. You're dead.
No. The whole game is set like at nighttime.
Oh,
like
okay.
you're not ever in a situation where you're in the daytime, really. That's very rare, and that's story driven. But because you no longer look human,
Oh.
you cannot be above ground. All of the other races, all of the other species can be above ground because they still look human. This is the one race that cannot, because they will immediately attract attention. So they have to either travel by the sewers or they have to travel with invisibility of some degree. They're also the one race that feeds off of like rats and other creatures more often. I eventually would really like to DM a Vampire the Masquerade gameplay, and it's the same concept there. I was watching one where one of the characters played as a Nosferatu.
Shit.
And his whole thing was because it's because you can be anything. You can be turned by any race and end up as a Nosferatu because it's a corruption of the embrace.
Yeah.
And for him, it's his whole thing when he was going through the storyline. It's you have like essentially a sort of invisibility, and to be above ground out in front of other people, you have to be invisible. You can't touch people. You can't really talk. Like, it's a whole process, and it's very fascinating. But they are very much more of like a rogue.
Yeah.
Is your best example to place them.
Slinking in the shadows, sneaking about,
Collecting information.
Yeah.
Because again, because they sneak, because they can turn invisible, because they've got these things, that's kind of how they're played. And it's very fascinating because it's all because Nosferatu was created as a character.
Yeah.
And developed into this. Because there is a race that is there is a group that are way more like the classic Dracula that you're expecting.
Seductive, fancy, suave.
And they are called the Toreador, known for their seductive nature, enthralling demeanor, and eloquent grace to
Is
the
that
point.
not what I just said?
Literally, to the point of obsession.
Ooh,
Toreador
yeah.
vampires embrace artists and lovers into their ranks, forever trying to stir their own dead-ended heart.
Oof.
Forever trying. They're supernaturally graceful and charming. The divas are always looking for the next thrill, leaving a detritus of discarded lovers and victims in their wake.
Yeah.
So literally, there's like a version of Dracula and a version of Nosferatu and Dracula are in this thing, and you can essentially play one of them.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of fascinating how, you know, more modern takes on it.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's fun that this movie also plays on a version of it. Because you never see Dracula. You never see Orlok out and about. He's always hiding away. Or you see it's his shadow. That's definitely a part of the game of it all, which is really kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many,
like I said,
fascinating
inspiration
concepts.
on inspiration
For real.
on inspiration.
But yeah, I really want to eventually get a game of it so that we can play. Because I'd just be curious what everyone would pick as their vampire. But yeah, it's kind of fascinating that there's so many different ways to play a vampire.
You said 15, so
There's so many
there
ways.
you go.
And I again, I really like this play on a vampire.
Yeah.
This animalistic,
I agree.
monstrous, because a lot of people like a bad word version of saying vampires like bloodsucker, leech, and that is the way that they depict Orlok
Very much.
is perfect
Yes.
in depicting like a leech.
Not everyone agrees.
I'm not shocked. I'm ready for that 1 star.
It's funny because there are some things you mentioned.
Because it's so fucking new. I'm ready. I'm ready to hear this
I only
2024
have one,
version.
but it summed up everything perfectly, I think.
Let's hear it.
All right. Nosferatu? More like no thank you, Ratu.
I knew I knew. The second you started that sentence, I knew it was going to be some fucking dumb wordplay on Nosferatu.
Which no thank you, Ratu is so stupid.
So stupid.
That's the worst thing you could have said. Stellar cinematography.
You could have been like Nosferatu, Naferatu.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I did it better than you. What the fuck?
That was great. That was good.
I swear to God. Anyway.
Naferatu.
Naferatu.
Nah. Very good. Yeah. Take notes.
For
1
real?
stars. Anyway, it says stellar cinematography. Sure, but this flick is a snooze fest masquerading as a horror. 0 scares, unless you count the vampire's mustache as a fright.
Oh, fucking Christ. Okay.
Seriously, who on earth thought a 70s style mustache would add to the already horrible recreation of an already tired movie?
You mean 1770? I don't know when.
Right. Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Because Vlad the Impaler was a very, 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 very long time ago.
Yeah.
Not 50 years ago.
No.
But that's fine.
You know?
Max Schreck was the creepiest vampire to ever grace the silver screen. This version was laughable at best. Oh, and the predictable jump scare? Yawn. Okay. I don't even know which one they're talking about.
I don't even know.
Like, what do you mean? All right. Remember how I said this movie was 2 hours and 12 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I bailed after 2 hours and 15 minutes of pure boredom.
What the fuck?
So after the movie was over?
So when the credits rolled? So in the credits. In the credits, you were like, I'm out.
But like a song in.
Yeah,
because
you were
that's
one
like
song
3
in.
minutes after.
You waited long enough for like enough names to scroll by that you were like, oh, I can leave now.
Yeah. And then he goes, the rest of the theater was moaning too, but I was the smart one who escaped first. What do you mean? You sat there after everybody was gone.
Yeah.
Like, what do you... Huh?
You were in an audience of ghosts because
Yeah.
motherfucker, that was the end of the movie.
And then the last line is, avoid this cinematic disaster. Even though you watched the whole thing.
Even though you watched the whole thing.
And then some.
And then some.
'Cause
You
you're-
stayed to listen to the music. Which makes it sound like you enjoyed this movie longer than you thought.
I cannot, simply.
What?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why would you give a timestamp?
That's all
That's
I
so
needed.
stupid.
That's all I needed. I was like, this one's okay. Yeah.
2 hours and 15 minutes. Motherfucker, the
That's
movie's
alright.
2 hours and 12 minutes. You waited a whole 3 minutes after the movie was done.
over and done.
You waited Look, waiting 3 extra minutes, your ass was waiting
You're
for that
sitting
song
there.
list, that music
Yeah,
list. That's
yes.
what you were. You were waiting to that, and that's almost the end of the film.
Most people stay 30 seconds into the
Yeah.
music. That's it. You stayed for 3 minutes. You must have really liked
and that's
it.
that's like the 30 seconds is so that they have enough time to Google whether or not there's an end
End
credit scene.
Yes.
Like that 30
Literally.
seconds is the difference between am I staying for an end credit scene or not?
Right. But, you know, maybe you put this in the wrong spot because you did say stellar cinematography, so.
Yeah. Like you can't
But then you say it's a cinematic disaster.
yeah.
So you're
You're contradicting yourself.
very much.
You can't say it's you can't say that the visuals are beautiful and then call it a cinematic disaster because that's the exact opposite of what you just said.
Yeah.
You can say that you don't like the story. Also, why you bitching about a mustache, motherfuckers?
It's a mustache.
It's a fucking mustache.
You're saying devious men you know don't have those? I think that was the point.
Do you have any
actually.
idea how many cartoon characters that are evil villains that have mustaches?
Right.
Do you have any idea?
Lots.
There are so fucking many. A mustache is almost required at this point.
Right.
Every time they're always twirling them stashes.
You know something devious and dubious is
Yeah.
coming.
They doobie doing dubious stuff.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was harder to say.
That was
than I
good.
thought.
That was good. They
But
do
it
be
did-
doing dubious stuff.
They doobie doing dubious stuff. I can't do it.
They do be doing dubious stuff. I don't know. It's the stash.
Them stashes.
Yep.
They'll fuck you up.
Them stashes will have you doing dubious stuff.
You be twirling that motherfucker, and before you know it,
You're sucking blood out of someone's chest.
yeah, for real.
But yeah.
But yeah, that's a very. Oh my god,
Yeah.
I can't get over the 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Because I definitely said it's 2 hours and 12. So I don't know
I'm
where
like,
you're getting your numbers from.
You
Unless he was timing it and sitting there like from when like the trailer started.
If he started the countdown at the trailers, bitch, that's not how this works.
We've already established that he's stupid and contradicts himself.
fucking
so.
clearly.
Oh, okay, let me not assume this is a man, but you know,
Whoever you are.
whoever said no thank you, Ratu, I probably also has a serious mustache and is just mad because
Your mustache ain't good enough, is it?
no, it doesn't make you dubious to it.
You just look stupid, right? That's what it is. You have stash
wish you
envy.
rocked it. Yeah, you wish you rocked it.
You
Stash
wish.
envy. I'm
You have
dead.
stash envy.
Okay.
You're like, I'm not gonna be naked drinking the blood out of somebody's chest like that.
nah.
Like I may die for it, but at least she hot.
Yes.
Ugh.
These 1 stars. They just make me laugh.
And they're so fucking random. Like, think for a second. Ugh. When you know that they can't comprehend an art piece,
Yeah.
and you're just like, I see.
I see.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it's fine.
Oh. But that's it
That's all she wrote.
for this episode. Our next one for next month is Smile 2.
The sound that just came out of my mouth, should tell you how insane.
At this point in time, I have not watched it yet because my life
God.
has just been busy. But I will be, obviously, because I need to before
So
this
good.
film.
So good, so good, so good. I still think about it. And it's been months. It's been like 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I still can't get over Voss water. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But if you don't, you will. You'll
know?
find out. You'll find out.
I will find out.
Yes.
But yeah, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, share us on the places and things. Make sure to send us an email at horrorunmasked@gmail.com in case you've got any movie suggestions. Hey, even like different conventions that you think that we would probably enjoy would be a cool one also. Or like events and stuff would be very cool. Again, our social media place is also wild, under construction.
Yep.
But for the most part, you can listen to us on all of the places that pods are cast. And again, email us if there's any places that we are not at that you would like us to be. But yeah, I think with that,
There's only one thing left to ask. Will you fear?
or will you fear not?